On 3, as the US tightens, Canada opens up fast-tracking visas for Indian doctors to plug its healthcare crisis. On 4 is about the global slowdown in alcohol consumption, leaving drink giants sitting on billions worth of unsold spirits. In the 5th on point, China's birth rate crisis deepens, raising alarms over economy, workforce and future growth. And finally, on 1.6, Prime Minister Modi's big message as Nitin Naveen takes charge. And let's take a quick look at the headlines. India will showcase its long-range anti-ship hypersonic glide missile developed by DRDO for the Indian Navy at the 77th Republic Day Parade. UP police arrests Noida builder Abhay Singh in Techie's death case. SIT inspects site of incident. One killed and 4 injured in mob attack in Assam as road project workers targeted over cattle theft. Bangladesh drama over T20 World Cup rescheduling continues as Dhaka refuses to play in India. ISIS claims responsibility for the Kabul blast at a Chinese restaurant which killed 7 people, including a Chinese national. As far as the Donald Trump's life on Truth Social is concerned, he has already taken over Greenland. Not only Greenland, he has also made Canada and Venezuela a part of the US. These images on your screens were shared by Trump on Truth Social, showing him hoisting the American flag on Greenland. This development comes after Donald Trump threatened punitive trade action against America's closest allies unless they agree to give Washington the right to buy the Arctic territory. The development over the last 48 hours underlined that this is no longer just a rhetorical gambit but a strategic confrontation with economic, military and geopolitical consequences. President Trump has threatened higher tariff on European nations over the Greenland dispute. The tariff would target Denmark, Germany, France, Sweden, other EU members, with Britain and Norway also included in the warning. The White House has made its position explicit. The United States demands the right to buy Greenland, arguing that Denmark cannot protect the territory and that American control is necessary for national security. Trump has warned that unless Europe cooperates, tariffs will begin from Feb and escalate in phases, a move that has rattled European capitals and the global markets alike. In response, the European Union is now preparing retaliation. European officials say that the bloc is considering invoking its Anti-Coercion Instrument, a powerful legal mechanism designed to counter economic pressure from foreign states. The instrument has never been used before. If activated, it could restrict US access to EU markets, impose penalties on American companies and suspend trade privileges. France is pushing for a coordinated EU action. The crisis has now spilled directly into trade diplomacy. EU ambassadors have held an emergency meeting while the European Parliament is considering pausing EU-US trade negotiations. Britain has also weighed in, calling Greenland non-negotiable, while EU officials say dialogue is essential to avoid escalation but warn that Europe will not negotiate under threat. This marks one of the most serious ruptures in transatlantic relations since the trade wars of the previous decade. At the heart of the crisis is Greenland's strategic value. Greenland is NATO territory, covered by the alliance's collective defense clause. It hosts critical US missile defense and early warning systems, forming a key pillar of America's northern security architecture. The island is also believed to be rich in strategic minerals vital for defense technologies and clean energy supply chains. Denmark has made it clear it strongly opposes any move to change Greenland's sovereignty, warning that any use of force would shatter NATO itself. Security analysts warn the implications go far beyond Greenland. If the United States can use force or coercion to seize territory, critics ask, why won't others? Russia could claim justification for redrawing borders in neighboring areas, including Ukraine. China could feel emboldened to push harder in Taiwan and the South China Sea. In short, rule-based international order itself could be weakened. This is not the first time Washington has eyed Greenland, but what makes the current episode different is the explicit linkage of sovereignty with tariffs, military logic and economic pressure. Greenland, home to just 57,000 people, has become the epicenter of global power struggle, pitting alliances, politics and raw strategic interests. As Europe prepares countermeasures and NATO watches nervously, the question is no longer just why America wants Greenland, but whether the world can afford such a move. On this issue, I am joined by Ambassador Veena Sikri and Professor Swaran Singh. Thank you both of you for joining me, madam. The tweet by President Trump today on Truth Social showing American flag on Greenland and showing entire Canada and Greenland to be part of America is not only inappropriate, but it also tells you that the man has no respect in terms of sovereignty of other nations. Ambassador Sikri.
Well, President Trump made himself very clear a few days ago when he was asked on a TV interview what are the limits to his power. And he said directly, there are no limits to my power except my own morality. That was his statement made a couple of days ago, or 3-4 days ago, on how he's conducting everything. So I think that says it all. And in fact, even very senior commentators like Francis Fukuyama have written a number of articles in recent days about what President Trump is doing and what his objectives are. And this is his own conclusion also, that in international law, there is nothing except the UN Charter. That is the ultimate. So whatever the UN Charter says, and the UN Charter says that there should be no conquest. There should be no conquest of any kind. It has to be all done by peaceful means and with the approval of the UN Security Council and so on. So in fact, what President Trump is doing, that he's creating his own, setting his own terms for what he thinks the world should look like, and he's going ahead and implementing it. Now, for the first time, we are seeing that on the Greenland issue, that the European Union is putting up a resistance. Now, whether this resistance strengthens when they come together, whether it materializes into some specific action, or whether it just melts away, is yet to be seen. I know that we know that President Macron, for example, it applies to everything that is happening. For example, President Macron has refused to join President Trump's peace board, the border peace that he wants in the second stage of the Gaza peace plan. And because of that, President Trump says, I'm going to put 200% tariffs on him, on France. So, these kind of threats coming in, we don't know what President Macron's next step is going to be. I know that President Macron has now written a letter to President Trump inviting him to visit Paris on his way back from Geneva. He's going for the Davos World Economic Forum, and saying, come and meet me in Paris. We'll have dinner together on Thursday and discuss these issues. So it's a totally new area of world interaction. Nobody has ever seen anything like this since the end of the Second World War. And, President Trump's second term coming up with all these issues is really a big, big challenge to the world order, the old world order, international law, global law, even national laws. So I think now, but that's of course an internal matter within the USA. But people within the USA are saying that President Trump is not following domestic law as well. And there's a debate on that, but that's of course within the USA, so we can't comment on that. But on international law, certainly it is a very, very new area, and I would say it's uncertain and it's scary. Because right now, President Trump has said 3 points. He says he wants Greenland. In the map that you're showing, he wants Canada as well. And this map, that is, the actual meeting took place in President Trump's office where he met all the EU leaders. But in the background is a map showing both Greenland and Canada as part of Europe.
That's the story. Actually, that picture in that map is the story. That he's showing the entire northern hemisphere, or the North America is American.
And he's also started on South America because Venezuela is already taken. And he's also talked about the Indian Ocean because he's talked about Chagos, the Chagos archipelago, what UK and Mauritius have agreed upon. And he's saying that UK did the wrong thing and he called it, like something stupid that the UK did on deciding to give up
Absolutely.
sovereignty for the Chagos archipelago. So
Absolutely.
it is a very, very new set of events and happenings. It's changing every day. There's something new every day. Let us see what the EU comes up with now.
Okay,
They're
so-
all going to meet in Davos over the next day or two.
Professor Swaran Singh, is it possible to mollycoddle, do a deal with a power with a colonial mindset? Like, people thought in 1940s, if you can give some tract of land to Germany, Germany under Hitler would get settled, but Hitler never settled. So this sort of a thinking that you can have a truck or a deal with Trump also tells you one thing: it's nearly impossible to satiate an appetite of a person who thinks that his power has no boundary.
Yes, I think that's the argument which is germinating now in narratives around President Trump, that perhaps appeasement could be very dangerous, and there are people who insinuate that appeasement of Trump could land us into World War III in that sense. But to put it very mildly, I think from the day one that all of us came to know who is a man called Donald Trump, we all have found him unconventional, to put it very, very mildly. And all his sayings and doings, therefore, have been out of the box or unconventional, puzzle, except that two things are very significant. One, that he is the president with a secured tenure of 4 years. Impeachment is not easy given the majority of Republicans. Of world's most powerful nation, and he keeps underlining that United States is the most powerful country, has most powerful military, and so on. Second, which is more threatening in that sense, is that at least some of his threats he's been able to actually implement, whether it is imposing tariffs, for example, or for example the bill on taking it all the way to 500% tariffs is now under discussion. Or I think more recently, the scary part of lifting of a sitting president of Venezuela and presenting him in a New York court, and that makes his all these grandiose expectations of doing things like taking over other countries' land perhaps little more scary than it should be. That's why Denmark is openly saying these are simply tweets, and Denmark is officially responding by saying we are willing to negotiate and talk, and also saying that we will need entire European Union to back us up in case such conversation has to take place with President Trump. Now, why President Trump wants to take Greenland is a puzzle for everybody, because the United States already has complete unquestioned access control on Greenland virtually de facto, and his excuse of Russia, China overtaking the territory are ridiculous, because China doesn't even have a formal relationship with Greenland. They have sought few times to explore investments which have been blocked, given the fact that the Greenlanders understand the trouble that it could generate. And in that sense, it is absolutely not logical what he's saying, except that President Trump doesn't fit into the
Professor,
traditional
he's
logic.
lying, first of all, he's lying. He says that, this is required for sea routes. The sea routes aren't opening in next 25 years, that's one. He's saying that it is required for the Golden Missile Dome. Well, Americans have vacated their bases in Greenland. They had their bases in 60s and 70s. I mean, so Americans have not even upgraded NORAD. That's not also been done. So I don't know what's the larger pretext. There has to be a other story than what we see. But Ambassador Sikri, the larger issue is, will it lead to demise of NATO, madam?
Well, that depends entirely now, as we speak, on what the NATO countries decide to do. They're going to meet in during the World Economic Forum in Davos tomorrow or day after, when all the leaders will be there, and Trump is also going to talk to all of them. So I expect that will be a fiery meeting, but a very fiery and volatile meeting. But in the end, will the NATO members sit down calmly and say, okay, well, if you want it so much, we're giving it to you. Now that will be something that will signal the beginning of a period that is very difficult. Even when all this talk of Greenland began, there was this, Venezuela, in fact, in early this year when Venezuela happened, then there was the discussion at the same time that there's an agreement between USA, Russia, and China, that China will take Taiwan, President Trump will take Venezuela, and now, of course, Greenland as well, and Russia and President Putin will take Ukraine. So, this kind of talk about reordering not only the world order but world sovereignty as well. There is absolutely no limit or no.
I'll just read the quote of U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent on today that has come on Greenland. He says, "I tell everybody, sit back, take a deep breath, do not retaliate. The president will be here tomorrow, which is Davos, and he will get this message across." And he said this is the World Economic Forum in Davos. He said, "I want the world to have an open mind." I mean, say Professor Swaran saying, "What open mind?" It's like, it's not even Chinese Berlin that you'll have 15 stations there. He's just saying that it's for my taking and I'm going to take it. And the Treasury Secretary said they have an open mind about it. This is a joke.
I think Treasury Secretary Bessent and Peter Navarro are known to speak a certain voice. Compared to Marco Rubio, for example, is relatively more sanity in his comments. First of all, there are different voices within the team that we hear. But we have to hear Master's voice, and he's going to speak tomorrow in Davos, and I'm sure he's going to make something more spectacular to make sure he gets all the headlines around the world. It's basically, I think he keeps repeating his anger with not getting the Nobel Peace Prize. I have no idea if that is what is making him do the way things are happening. He's claiming all kind of things around Maria Machado's giving her that medal. That is an obsessive, I think it's a personality problem that President Trump have in that sense, because it makes no logic. His board of peace itself is very interesting that he's going to launch tomorrow in Davos. I think 60 countries have been informally shared that draft of what it wants to do. So many heads of state have been invited. Madam Ambassador just mentioned about Macron. Even Tony Blair has distanced himself, and Tony Blair is supposed to be the closest of allies of President Trump or United States. So complete uncertainty about what is going to happen, of initiatives that he's taking. He goes on saying that things have resolved in Gaza, whereas things are still worse there. He's moved on to Venezuela. He says he's acting president of Venezuela. So, it's completely, I fail to understand, and I think most of us fail to understand what he wants to do, why he wants to do all that, what is he going to get out of it. This is definitely pushing all his strategic partners to reduce their dependence. And I think NATO again ultimately might
two biggest wars have happened out of colonialism, the World War I and World War II. Yes. And the second one was to restore the pride, which happened post Treaty of Versailles, and the first one was actually a result of trying to claim better areas for oneself, and that led to a war. So I think the bottom line here is that I think Trump wants to restore America to some imagined pristine glory, and that is the most dangerous thing, And I think he's internalized that story that, he can restore America to that pristine golden order if he does something which is like grabbing the world, grabbing the land, taxing the world. But we'll have to wait and see, because Trump on Wednesday at 7 p.m. India time will be speaking in Davos, and we'll be cutting him live. So I would just like to inform our viewers that this is one story, the Trump in Davos, which we will be tracking. And there's a possibility of an order by the American court tomorrow itself, or maybe even late evening. But that's for another bulletin to do. Thank you both of you for joining me on this conversation. So this was on point one. In another on point, but that's after a short break, we will discuss why Indian students are moving away from United States campuses after a short break.
A tall cappuccino with caramel syrup and cardamom.
Sure.
A tall cappuccino with caramel syrup and cardamom.
Sure.
Tall alfacino with camel soup and Cardi G mom. अदरक वाली चाय पिलाओ ना कड़क।
सर, मलाई मार के देती हूँ।
लाइफ हो या इन्वेस्टिंग, भीड़ के पीछे मत भागो। म्यूचुअल फंड अपनाओ और खुद के हिसाब से इन्वेस्ट करो।
म्यूचुअल फंड निवेश बाजार जोखिमों के अधीन है। योजना से संबंधित सभी दस्तावेजों को ध्यान से पढ़ें।
लास्ट टाइम कश्मीर गई थी ना, वहाँ खाया शहद, पर उसके लिए कश्मीर जाना पड़ेगा।
अरे कश्मीर क्यों जाना, कश्मीर ही यहाँ आ गया।
सुंदर वादियों में महकती खुशबू और रंग बिरंगे फूल, इनमें से शहद निकाल कर जमा किया जाता है असली शहद, लायन कश्मीर हनी।
असली शहद, असली स्वाद।
तेरी एक जिद और फैक्ट्री वर्कर सब डबल।
रिटायर हो जाऊं क्या?
अच्छा, बिजनेस के लिए लोन का आइडिया किसका था? पर बुढ़ापा आ गया हो।
इनकी जिद ने कारोबार भी बढ़ाया और रोजगार भी। टाटा कैपिटल बिजनेस लोन्स के साथ।
Indian students' enrollment in the United States have seen a sharp and unprecedented fall, dropping by nearly 75% in the first year of Donald Trump's second term, marking one of the steepest declines in recent history. According to a report published in our daily newspaper, Times of India, the decline represents a dramatic reversal for a country that has consistently been the largest source of international students in the US. The biggest impact has been seen during the August-October fall intake, which traditionally accounts for nearly 70% of Indian admissions to American universities. Education Consultant says thousands of students either deferred their admissions or abandoned US plans altogether due to prolonged visa delays and uncertainty. At the heart of the decline is a toughened US visa regime. Students and counselors report long wait times for the visa interviews, increased documentation requirements, and unpredictable outcomes, creating anxiety among applicants and families. The uncertainty has been compounded by a series of immigration enforcement measures. By the end of 2025, nearly 8,000 student visas had reportedly been revoked, forcing some students to leave the US within weeks. This is part of a broader tightening that has affected not just students, but Indian professionals and families living in the United States of America. Legal experts say frequent rules changes and compliances costs have created a perception of instability around long-term prospects in the US. The sharp drop contrasts sharply with the past trends. Until recently, Indian students formed the single largest international students group in the US, particularly in STEM and engineering programs. As US enrollment fall, other countries are gaining ground. Education Consultant says that the Indian students are increasingly choosing destinations that offer predictability, smoother visa processing, and clearer post-study employment rules. The impact of the enrollment crash is being felt on American campuses as well. International students contribute billions of dollars annually to the US economy, and universities with high dependence on Indian students now face budget and planning challenges. Analysts say the next academic year will be crucial. With no clear signals of a policy rollback, experts warn the US risks losing its long-held edge as world's top education destination. For Indian students and families, the message is clear. The US is no longer the default choice it once was, just one option among many in an increasingly competitive global education landscape. So this was on point 2. Up next, we talk about the express visa which Canada is issuing for Indian doctors. Canada has announced a major policy move aimed at strengthening its healthcare system, and Indian doctors stand to benefit the most. Under a new express visa entry scheme, thousands of Indian medical professionals could soon find a faster pathway to work and settle in Canada. Canada has rolled out a significant initiative to address shortages in its medical services, offering express visa entry to Indian doctors under a new point-based immigration scheme. According to details, reported from the Toronto, the scheme is expected to be implemented by end of this month. In the first phase, Canada plans to issue visas to 6,000 doctors, 1,000 for federal services and 5,000 for provincial governments. The objective is clear. Canada wants to urgently plug gaps in its healthcare workforce. Importantly, the scheme is not limited to doctors currently working in India. Indian doctors already employed in Canada as well as medical professionals seeking to move from India will both be eligible to apply. Applications will be scrutinized based on multiple parameters set by Canadian authorities. At the heart of this policy is Canada's express entry system, which follows a point-based selection model. Under the system, applicants can earn points based on age, educational qualifications, and professional experience. Experts say younger doctors are likely to gain the most as Canadian policymakers believe they will contribute longer to healthcare system. Even after retirement, authorities expect many doctors to continue providing private medical services, making them long-term assets. The scheme itself operates across 3 levels. The federal program considers overseas experience. The inland class applies to professionals with experience inside Canada, and the trade program includes other skilled workers such as plumbers and housekeeping staff. The doctors are expected to feature prominently in the healthcare push. Experts say express entry significantly improves chance of securing permanent residency. After approval, applicants gain the right to live in Canada for 5 years, after which citizenship becomes far easier to obtain. Indian professionals already form the backbone of Canada's high-skilled immigration pipeline. Official figures show that over 30% of Canada's high-skilled visas go to Indian every year. In 2025 alone, more than 52,000 Indian tech and medical professionals received high-skill visas. China ranked second with 80,000 visas, while India has remained the top source country for the past 5 years. The immigration push also comes amid renewed diplomatic engagement. India and Canada have resumed talks on an economic partnership agreement after a 5-year pause. Negotiations restarted in December, and there is speculation that Canada's Prime Minister may visit India later this year. Analysts say easing professional mobility, especially for doctors, could become a cornerstone of the renewed engagement. For Indian doctors, this could open doors to faster migration, permanent residency and long-term settlement. For Canada, it is an urgent attempt to shore up its healthcare system. As global competition for skilled professionals intensifies, immigration, once again, is becoming a strategic tool. So this is all I had on point 3, but it's time for a short break. In on point 4, we're going to talk about Gen Zs, and they are saying no to alcohol.
इतनी दूर कैसे करेगी? ऑटो लेगी क्या? नहीं अम्मा। तो सरप्राइज। जिद्दी लड़की।
इसकी जिद ने दी इसे एक नई उड़ान, टाटा कैपिटल 2 व्हीलर लोन्स के साथ।
लास्ट टाइम कश्मीर गई थी ना, वहाँ खाया शहद, पर उसके लिए कश्मीर जाना पड़ेगा।
अरे कश्मीर क्यों जाना? कश्मीर ही यहाँ आ गया।
सुंदर वादियों में महकती खुशबू और रंग बिरंगे फूल, इनमें से शहद निकाल कर जमा किया जाता है असली शहद, लायन कश्मीर हनी।
असली शहद, असली स्वाद।
A historic slump in global demand for premium alcohol has left the world's biggest drink makers sitting on what industry insiders are now calling a lake of unsold spirits, forcing companies to shut distilleries, pause production and slash prices to move bottles piling up in warehouses. From Scotch whiskey and American whiskey to cognac and tequila, the slowdown has hit almost every major category of aging spirits. According to financial disclosures, 5 of the world's largest distilled alcohol producers, Diego, Pernod Ricard, Campari Group, Brown-Forman, and Remy Cointreau are collectively holding close to $22 billion worth of maturing spirits. This is the highest inventory level in more than a decade. In some cases, the scale of the problem is extraordinary. At Remy alone, maturing cognac inventory is now valued at 1.8 billion euros, almost double the company's annual revenues and close to its entire market capitalization. Analysts warn that these stockpiles are intensifying debt pressure and could eventually trigger a price war in the global spirits market. Industry analysts say the current inventory buildup is unprecedented. Bernstein analyst Trevor Sterling says spirit stockpiles have now surpassed levels seen even after the global financial crisis. The roots of the problem, he says, lies in decisions taken during the pandemic. During the COVID years, lockdown fueled a surge in alcohol consumption. Expecting the boom to last, producers dramatically increased output in 2021 and 2022, aging millions of liters of spirits that are now coming fully online. But soaring inflation brought the industry back down to earth. As disposable incomes tightened globally, consumers cut back on premium alcohol, triggering profit warnings, leadership changes, and a sharp investment pullback from the sector's biggest names. Some analysts believe deeper societal shifts may also be at play. Rising health consciousness, moderation in alcohol consumption, and the growing use of weight loss drugs such as Wegovy and the Ozempic are increasingly being cited as factors reducing demand, particularly in developed markets. For producers of aging spirits, the volatility presents a unique challenge. Unlike fast-moving consumer goods, spirits like whiskey and cognac must be planned years in advance. Cognac makers, for example, must decide today how much cognac will be aged for 2, 4, 10 or even 12 years, long before the demand is clear. Nowhere in the downturn more visible in this market. Export of French cognac plunged 72% year on year in Feb 25, according to the industry body BNIC. The slump has been compounded by geopolitics, with China imposing a 34.9% duty on European cognac amid trade tensions with the European Union. At a recent earnings update, Remy's chief executive admitted elevated supplies mean prices are likely to fall. During the pandemic, premium cognac sold for as much as $45 a bottle in the United States. Prices that have since dropped closer to $35. The tequila sector tells a similar story. A decade-long boom fueled by celebrity-backed brands linked to Hollywood stars pushed producers to invest heavily in new distilleries. But just as new capacity came online, demand collapsed. By late 24, Mexico was sitting on more than 500 million liters of tequila in inventory, almost equal to its annual production. In the United States of America, the world's largest spirit market, the slowdown is accelerating. Sales of major brands from Don Julio Tequila to Jameson Irish Whiskey continue to slide, with data showing the decline worsening compared to previous months. So far, producers have avoided heavy discounting on the scale seen during earlier crises such as Whiskey Losh of the 1980s, but the balance sheets are under strain. Debt levels at companies like Diageo and Pernod Ricard have climbed well above historical norms, raising pressures on management to act. As a result, production cuts are underway. Japanese drinks giant Suntory has shut its main Jim Beam Bourbon distillery in Kentucky for at least a year. Diageo has halted whiskey production at facilities in Texas and Tennessee until the summer. But analysts warn this is a risky strategy. Cutting production today could leave companies short of stock 5 or 10 years from now if demand rebounds. As experts note, the boom and bust cycle of the past 5 years was nearly impossible to predict, and forecasting consumer demand years ahead remains a gamble. For now, the global spirit industry is caught between yesterday's optimism and today's slowdown, trying to drain a lake of unsold alcohol while guessing what the world will want to drink next. This was on point 4. Next up on point 5, why is China's birth rate declining so drastically? China is facing a demographic crisis that years of state interventions have failed to stop. For the 4th straight year, deaths have outnumbered births, and in 2025, China's birth rate fell to its lowest level since 1949. Despite aggressive policies, moral pressure, and financial incentives, fewer Chinese are choosing to have children, and the consequences are mounting. China's population continued to shrink in 2025, as official data shows just 7.92 million babies were born last year, down from 9.54 million in 2024. At the same time, 11.31 million people died, pushing China into its fourth consecutive year of population decline. The birth rate has now fallen to 5.63 births per 1,000 people, the lowest since the founding of the People's Republic of China in 1949. The collapse is unfolding even as China's economy grew 5% in 2025, highlighting a troubling disconnect between economic output and demographic stability. China's leadership has responded with sweeping and at times intrusive efforts to reverse the trend. President Xi Jinping has called for a new marriage and childbearing culture. Local officials have framed childbirth as a patriotic duty. Some regions have tracked women's menstrual cycles while others have tightened abortion guidelines. Most recently, authorities imposed a 13% tax on birth control products, a move widely interpreted as an indirect attempt to discourage their use. But among young people, the reaction has been blunt and dismissive. On social media, users mocked the move, saying raising a child costs far more than birth control. Others questioned why the state was intervening in personal choices while offering little relief from the mounting economic pressures. For many young Chinese, the decision to delay or avoid parenthood is rooted in financial insecurity. Housing remains unaffordable, job prospects are uncertain, and social welfare systems too weak to support families long term. Demographers warn that China may already have crossed a point of no return, despite relaxing one-child policy in 2016 and later allowing 3 children in 2021. Fertility rates have continued to fall. The working-age population is shrinking, while the number of people aged 60 and above is projected to reach 400 million by 2035, placing enormous strain on pensions, healthcare and public finances. Even efforts to boost marriage have failed to gain traction. Some local governments now offer cash rewards to matchmakers, but marriage rates continue to fall, divorces are rising, and many young people say they simply do not see marriage or parenthood as necessary. China's demographic crisis is no longer a future risk. It is a present reality with fewer babies, fewer workers, and more retirees. The challenge ahead is structural and long-term. And despite state pressure and policy experimentation, one truth is becoming clear: population growth cannot be legislated. And finally, on point 6, we talk about Prime Minister Modi's new boss, Nitin Nabin, but after a short break.
With Skoda Supercare and growing network across 180 plus cities, you never drive alone.
Skoda.
घर है वही जहाँ सब संग हो, रिश्तों को रंग दो, दुनिया को रंग दो.
Birla Opus Paints.
तेरी एक जिद और फैक्ट्री वर्कर्स सब डबल.
रिटायर हो जाऊं क्या?
अच्छा, बिजनेस के लिए लोन का आइडिया किसका था? पर बुढ़ापा आ गया हो.
इनकी जिद ने कारोबार भी बढ़ाया और रोजगार भी. टाटा कैपिटल बिजनेस लोन्स के साथ.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi delivered a wide-ranging and politically significant address as the Bharatiya Janata Party appointed Nitin Nabin as its new national president. Nabin will head the world's biggest political party. He takes over as the president at a time when the visible difference between RSS and BJP have been set aside. Modi made most of this opportunity.
आज भाजपा का जितना फोकस संगठन के विस्तार पर है, उतनी ही बड़ी प्राथमिकता कार्यकर्ता के निर्माण की भी है। और जब बात पार्टी के विषयों को आती है, तब माननीय नितिन नवीन जी, मैं एक कार्यकर्ता हूं, वे मेरे बॉस हैं।
Nitin Naveen, Prime Minister, hailed the new BJP president as a millennial leader who uses AI. He also said that he has already presented his report card to Naveen.
इस महत्वपूर्ण कालखंड की शुरुआत में हमारे माननीय नितिन नवीन जी बीजेपी की विरासत को आगे बढ़ाएंगे। मैं आजकल के युवाओं की भाषा में कहूं तो नितिन जी खुद भी एक प्रकार से मिलेनियल है। वो उस जनरेशन से हैं जिसने भारत में बड़े आर्थिक, सामाजिक और टेक्नोलॉजिकल परिवर्तन होते देखे हैं। हमारे राष्ट्रीय अध्यक्ष जी अब हमारा मार्गदर्शन करने वाले हैं। उनका एक एक शब्द हमारे लिए आगे की दिशा होगी। मैं भी एक कार्यकर्ता के तौर पर मैं पहले नए अध्यक्ष जी को मेरे काम का हिसाब दे रहा था। मैंने हिसाब दिया, अब वो मेरा सीआर लिखेंगे। लेकिन अब मेरे आगे के काम के लिए मैं उनके मार्गदर्शन की प्रतीक्षा कर रहा हूं।
The Prime Minister's speech outlined the BJP's ideological journey, organizational philosophy, governance record and future roadmap. Here are the 9 key takeaways from the Prime Minister Modi's address. Prime Minister Modi said BJP's presidential selection was not symbolic but a result of month-long democratic exercise involving party workers at every level. He said this reflects the BJP's grassroots culture and cadre-based structure. 2. Prime Minister said BJP's direction is rooted in India's history, culture, values. He recalled recent commemorations marking 75 years of Janasangh, 125 years of Dr. Shyama Prasad Mukherjee, 100 years of Atal Bihari Vajpayee and the centenary of the RSS, stressing ideological continuity over political convenience. 3. Prime Minister Modi credited former party presidents for building BJP at every stage, saying the party grew under Murli Manohar Joshi, L.K. Advani expanded under Venkaiah Naidu, and Nitin Gadkari won its first majority under Rajnath Singh, returned to power under Amit Shah and formed the government under J.P. Nadda. 4. Calling it his proudest identity, the Prime Minister said he is first and foremost a BJP worker, a karyakarta. In a striking remark, he said, I am a BJP worker and Nitin Naveen is my boss, reinforcing the party's organizational ethos where roles matter more than personalities. 5. Prime Minister Modi said Nitin Naveen carries a major responsibility, not just managing the BJP organization, but also coordinating with NDA partners. He described him as a proven leader who has delivered in every role entrusted to him. 6th, highlighting generational change, the Prime Minister said Nitin Naveen is a millennial leader who has witnessed India's technological, economic and social transformation from the radio era to artificial intelligence. He linked this to the BJP's focus on youth leadership and said the next 25 years will be decisive in achieving the goal of Viksit Bharat by 2047. 7. The Prime Minister described the BJP as sanskar, a family where relationships matter more than formal membership. He said while presidents and officials change, the party's values and direction remain constant. He stressed that the BJP's national character comes from deep local roots and its ability to provide space to regional aspirations. 8th, Prime Minister Modi said BJP's journey over past 11 years is an extraordinary example of public trust. He cited party's expansion across states, governments formed on its own, growing presence in West Bengal, Telangana, gains in Maharashtra, and steady growth in Kerala and local bodies despite anti-incumbency challenges. And 9. Drawing a sharp contrast with the Congress's dynastic model, the Prime Minister said BJP represents a politics of service and development. He highlighted welfare, delivery, poverty reduction, Northeast integration, and decisive reforms like Article 370, triple talaq. On security, he said Naxalism is nearing extinction, infiltration is being tackled firmly, and urban extremism and the networks associated will not be allowed to undermine national security. Concluding his address, PM said BJP's guiding principle, party above self and nation above party. He said the moral clarity has enabled decisions once considered impossible and expressed confidence that under Nitin Nabin's leadership, the BJP will continue to expand and govern and shape India's future. On this issue, I am joined by Ratan Sharda, author and political analyst, Smita Mishra, senior journalist. Thank you both of you for joining me for this short discussion. So that it was, when a lot of smile came to people's face when Prime Minister Modi, Mr. Sharda said, he's my boss and he's going to write my CR. Mr. Sharda.
Good evening, and it's a good day to talk about it, because what Modi ji repeated is something like a private joke in our organization. That person who becomes senior, there is no CR as such, but he writes the CR. So we joke about the person, अरे यार तुम तो दोस्त थे, अब तो senior बन गए, अब मेरा CR नागपुर में ठीक जाना चाहिए. This is standing joke in RSS organization. Secondly, he very importantly underlined the importance of organization above the government. What happens as the party becomes stronger and goes into more into electoral mode, more into power games, organization loses its vitality, organization loses its importance, and that can be dangerous for an organization which is cadre based. More so as new people join BJP in hordes. Since 2014, you see the huge expansion of the base, people like Modi ji, people like BJP or RSS, but they have no clue of the philosophy or the ideology of RSS and BJP. So when they join, they have to be retrained or in fact just imbibed with the values which have brought BJP where it is. If that is not there, then what happens that people may compromise they believe we are for power. So this message that organization is very important, organization needs to be given due respect, is very important message for the new age leaders who have taken important positions in BJP, who don't carry the old ethos because they have joined new, they are not aware. I know, because once in a while when I have met some of them, they were not aware of 370, some were not aware of Ram Janmabhoomi significance. So Modi's message is very important. The organization has to be given due respect, it's to be given importance, and that is what has come through his lecture. More very touching remark that I would remember Nabin is not what he said, but one particular sentence where he says that हम मोदी जी को दूर से देखते थे, कभी सोचा नहीं था कि उनके साथ बैठूंगा मैं. This message that anybody who works hard and works sincerely and humbly can reach the top position next to the PM whom you looked at from a distance with respect and awe, that I think is the most important message for any Karyakarta, that you keep working, your work will be appreciated, noted, and you will be elevated. That particular message was very important, and as I said, organizational issues are very important, and the government will run its own. Nobody needs to talk about that. We can talk about the achievement or non-achievement, and that organization has to be always alert. That is the message that has gone through. I think that's very important, because as BJP grows bigger and bigger, the arrogance can come in, lack of understanding of people who have joined recently from different parties, typically from secular camp. When you join a Hindutva camp, you have no clue about what are the roots. He talked about roots. So what are the roots of that particular organization? Why it is different from others? It is not just another horse you are riding. It's very different kind of person. That is very important.
Absolutely. And let me play those visuals again from inside the office. I think the entire imagination of this visual was to ensure that the legitimacy is with Nabin. If you look at it, Smita, he's politically junior to most of the people who are there inside the room. But the chair he occupies is given the importance. Isn't that so?
Yes, in terms of organizational positioning, I mean, up till today. And in terms of age too, Nitin Naveen definitely, is much younger and also much junior in organizational standing till today. But today, after this formal taking charge, he is now the boss of all those people you say standing there, including organizationally the Prime Minister of the country. Absolutely. But Kartike, I think more than giving a message to Nitin or the leaders who was sitting there, I think it was, as Ratan Shardaji just pointed out, I think the message was to the entire BJP organization of the country, because 45 is really young, and BJP and its and organizations affiliated with the Sangh Parivar have seen Nitin almost as a child. I mean, forget BJP leaders. I remember Nitin as such a greenhorn Yuva Morcha Neta, who was the general secretary at the time when Anurag Thakur was president of the Yuva Morcha, and he used to handle all the organizational Yuva Morcha matters. And then he got elected as an MLA, and then he won 4 elections in a row. So, you see, there are people who are much older to him. It is natural for them to have a sense of awkwardness, because someone who was, a young boy in their eyes is suddenly now going to take decisions. At the same time, a message must go out into the organization all over the country that, look, I, Narendra Modi, now consider Nitin Navin my boss. I think it is such a strong message to everybody that everybody will now understand that Nitin Navin is the president, and if the Prime Minister is calling him boss in a public platform, which means he, it sort of gives, it entrenches the authority of the person. At the same time, I think he has given a kind of a message to some of the other political parties, including Congress and some regional parties, about the working style
and dynasticism. That's given. But Mr. Shada, this also comes in the wake of a long pending decision on the presidentship of Bharatiya Janata Party, in a long consultation that took place between RSS and BJP. So people have a lot of views that there is a history to this appointment. The appointment of the new president was not taking place.
See, you are correct that it has taken a lot of time, and it became a joke.